everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Irene. I hope you're all doing well. So today's video is all about 10 ways you can improve your sewing projects drastically and make them look very professional. These are easy tricks that you can apply to your sewing process that will just make a huge difference. I hope you enjoy. So the first step is to use interfacing even when your sewing pattern doesn't explicitly tell you that you need to. For example, every time you're sewing a garment with facings, those facings need to be interfaced, and also colors and cuffs, all of those things in front of jackets especially, and shirts, they have some facings that give a lot of structure, a lot more professional crispy look that you can get from an interfacing that you should never skip. But be careful to choose your interfacing correctly, because if you choose one that is too thick, then it's just going to feel like a cardboard. This is a mistake I did before, and it's one that kind of ruins the look of your garment and that you can easily avoid. And also make sure that you use a light color interfacing for your light color garment and black interfacing that exists for your black garments. I just found out like a few months ago that black ones existed, and it was during the first time I was ever sewing a black thing, and thankfully I found out. So the second way is to press as you go. This is the most important, because pressing as you go can not only make your garments way easier to work with, especially when you're sewing, for example, darts. I always press my darts before I sew them and then after again, because this way when I'm sewing them they don't shift so much and it's way easier to follow a straight line. And it also makes your garments simply sit better, look way more professional, and hides even the imperfections. If you didn't do your darts really well, if you haven't learned yet certain things perfectly, pressing can make a garment look way more professional, even if it isn't really that professionally made. So number 3 is actually finishing your seams. I was very surprised to find out that a lot of people actually don't even finish their seams. This was quite a shock, because I finish even the seams that you're not really supposed to finish. For example, I use my pinking shears to make sure that I finish the seams inside the facings or even inside collars, or just to have a peace of mind. I really don't like leaving things unfinished, even knowing it, even if it's inside something. You don't have to go that extreme, but definitely finish your seams, because the inside of your garment is as important as the outside. Not only is it going to make you feel more proud of what you've sewn, it's also going to give your garment longevity, and it's going to obviously look more professional on the inside and not fray everywhere. So number 4 is the most important step of sewing in general. It is finding the grain line. So before you cut your fabric, make sure you absolutely find the grain line and find it correctly. Watch as many videos as you need. I know that it's very confusing when you're a beginner to understand what it even is and how it works, but finding the grain line is the biggest, most important step before you make a garment, because if you haven't done it, then your garment is going to twist weirdly and it's just going to look really, really weird. Even in certain fabrics, it's going to change the way the color of the fabric looks, for example, like with velvet and stuff. So it's very, very important. Do not skip this, and be very meticulous to find the grain perfectly. So number 5 is paying attention to your darts. So funny thing is, even when I first started sewing, I was always pressing really, really well. So I never realized that there is such a thing as pointy darts. And it's only when I saw a video like how to not get pointy darts that I realized the darts that I was making were actually sort of pointy sometimes, but I just wasn't realizing it because of the way I was pressing it so well. And then I learned techniques to make sure that my darts are perfectly, flush, and there isn't that little dimple in the end of the, of the dart itself. And pressing is certainly one of those ways. Using especially a pressing cushion is, like I said, very important, but also you can sort of curve the tip of it a little bit. There are many videos on YouTube about that. Because our bodies aren't like sharp and geometrical, there are curves, the angles are soft, and we can't just make a triangle shape there and expect it to look perfect. So this is, you know, going to make a huge difference in the end result of your, you know, garment, because darts, especially bust darts, they're just here, so like we can see it. One of the first things that we notice if there are dimples in the end of your darts. So number 6 is something I've already talked about many times, that is understitching. Understitching is sewing the facing to the seam allowance underneath. For example, if I was wearing a shirt and there was a facing sort of like this, I would sew the facing to the seam allowance in here. I don't know if it's making sense the way I'm showing it, but there are many videos on YouTube that you can watch. When I do that, what it does is make sure that the facing is pulled backwards and I don't see the facing poking out through the front. I see the fabric folding the other way. So you don't see facings poke out, you know, they don't fold outside or, you know, shift as much, and that is always something you will find in well-made garments, and it's very important. It's not the same as top stitching because it's invisible from the outside. It's just something that happens between the facing and the seam, so it looks very flush without even having to do any hand sewing or anything. Is already invisible. So number 7 is something I've talked about already before, and it's stay stitching. Stay stitching means stitching the edges of your garment, your pattern pieces, before you start sewing them at all, a little bit like 1/4 of an inch inside your seam line so that it doesn't stretch. And you do this with like a small stitch. It's not like basting stitch, like 5mm or so length, but like a short stitch length. That is going to help your garment not gape and stretch as you're handling it. And even if you think you're being very gentle, you're almost guaranteed to stretch it out some way or another. So it helps your garment fit better and, you know, not lose its shape as you're making it. So number 8 is to reduce bulk as much as you can. There are many ways and many different situations in sewing, but this one example is grading, for example. So if you have like a neckline and you put a collar on the neckline and you have all those seam allowances sandwiched together in the inside of the underneath the facing, and you want to shorten them, you don't just go clip all of them together at the same level. You instead create some sort of let's say a staircase. So like one of them is longer than the other one and then the other one, so that there isn't a huge thick single level layer of seam allowances. This helps it like be less bulky. And you know, grading is one way to reduce bulkiness, but also like according to your situation, you can either search for on YouTube or like think about ways to reduce bulk, like the correct seam finish and, you know, the correct stitches. These are all things that you should consider so that your garment is as lightweight as possible. So number 9 is clipping. Clipping is literally making little clips in the seam allowance of your garment and in certain areas in order to give it more mobility and in order to have it sit more nicely. This, for example, is done on necklines. Clipping is a technique you use on concave curves, so like bowl-shaped curves. And imagine that if you want your, you know, curve to sit nicely, you need to give it a little bit of movement so that it can sort of move up and down however you want it. Giving clips, making clips on that curve helps you be able to stretch it out and give it more mobility and have it sit way better. Number 10 is notching. So notching instead is something similar to clipping, but it's done on like mountain-shaped curves. So not bowl-shaped, but mountain-shaped ones. And you don't just clip, but you actually take out pieces of fabric, because if you have a, you know, bulky seam allowance, it's not going to sit right, so you need to actually take some off. So you cut little V-shape or little triangles close to each other so that this helps it sit way better and not pull into different directions and create like sharp shapes that aren't circular at all when you press it. So these are my 10 tips for a more professional look in your sewn garments. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that my tips were useful to you. If I forgot anything, let me know in the comments, and let me know also which ones were the most interesting ones, which ones did you not know, if any, or which ones you knew about before. And also remember to like, comment and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!